actually try to do things which would make people think well of us. It's an interesting approach to politics. We have on climate change pretty much irritated in all of the progressive countries, I would say. On the Middle East, we have given up our reputation for fair-minded positioning and have become frankly and reflexively pro-Israeli, and I might say pro-Likud rather than pro-Israeli. We have, by shifting our focus from Africa to Latin America, we've given about 7 African countries a reason to vote for us, and we've given the other 50 no reason. And in return for that, we got the votes that we were already going to get in Latin America. The only country that doesn't vote for us in Latin America is usually Brazil, for reasons best known to them. Just about everybody else does. So we have really made it very difficult for ourselves. And I think that actually, someone asked me, is this going to be a slam dunk? And I said, no. But we're probably going to win after, it's going to be a jump shot after a rebound in traffic. But I think we'll probably get in, but it will be a lot harder than it had to be, and it will be despite the current government's policies. And it will be, ironically, because of the muscle memory of the UN about what we used to do, which this government has abandoned, which may get us there. That's just that's a long introduction to what should we do when we get on the council, but I thought I'd say that anyway. And that is, I think that there's, if the Americans are serious, if they're serious about the UN, about what they're going to try to do with the UN, I've seen the statements by Hillary Clinton, I've read all of the statements by Obama, and they sound very serious. And this opens up the opportunity for a lot of positive stuff to happen at the UN. And if we were smart, we would say to ourselves, what is our agenda? Well, our agenda should be I think, to make peacekeeping operations, peacekeeping being a misnomer, but anyway, the military operations more effective. We've got the capability to do that, and I think that would be a priority for me. I would make a priority out of arms control and disarmament. There are things that we've been pushing for years, which are now possibly possible. I would do that. I think I would also try to do something on accountability, transparency and accountability. The same things that we used to talk about. The Security Council is a place where the P5 go to do their thing. They do it in the back room, and I think it's still important to try to break into that. On the reform of the Security Council, I could see a situation where we had maybe 6 or 7 permanent seats. We could push for that, and that would be re-electable for 4 or 5 years. We would leave enough room there for us to get one, because I'm not of the mind that some people seem to be to have given up on that. The whole notion of the security, it's preposterous that a country like Iceland was trying to get on the UN Security Council. I mean, the fundamental requirement is a contribution to international peace and security. And it means more than being an airport. And Iceland wasn't able to do anything. Fortunately, they went bankrupt before they got on the council, and that applies to other countries as well. One of the great ironies is that Canada was the promoter of the middle power theory, along with the Netherlands. But we were this was a Pearsonian, Hume-Wrong. This was something that was identifiably Canadian. We saw ourselves as a middle power. But by the way, there were 60 countries, 65? There weren't 192. We're not a middle power anymore. Actually, we're very close to the top in almost any measurement you want to make. Even if you go to 2050, and you talk about GDP, we're still in the top 6, we're still 16th according to BRIC. And if you talk about usable power, usable influence, it may be that the Indians have 600 million peasant farmers, and that adds up to a lot of GDP, but it doesn't add up to much capability. So there's we're beginning to sell ourselves a little bit short. But sure, we should promote reform of the Security Council. We should promote reform of how the Secretary General is selected. The current system is preposterous, where the 5 get together and then we should insist on an election, and we should defeat whoever the 5 come up with, as a matter of principle. Because it's crazy that the 5 do this. Are we happy with what we got out of what the 5 have done? I don't think so. So I think that there's a lot of there's a whole agenda that we can be pursuing. Even the issue, the government has pretty much extracted the maximum disbenefit out of what was otherwise a good idea, which is maternal health and children's health. Even that, you could run that through the Security Council. You could run it in such a way that it had to do with military missions or whatever. But the very fact that they've said they can't bring themselves to utter the A word or the C word, pretty much puts them, I mean, they've tied themselves in knots over what was otherwise a good idea. So I don't know. But you could have done that as well. So even the things that this government, which is not very UN oriented, thinks is important, could have been, or could still be, promoted through the UN Security Council. And by the way, and this is perhaps one of the more interesting things, the membership of the Security Council and the membership of the G20 is going to be pretty close to overlap in the next couple of years. So some very interesting work could be done in trying to resolve the relationship between the two, and trying to create a reciprocal and a symbiotic relationship between the G20 and the 15 on the Security Council, and enlarging the Security Council. I think that there's some very useful stuff that could be done there if there were people with the imagination to do it.
Nice. Well, I should start by saying I'm happy I'm not Icelandic. The question of private security companies, I don't know, how much it evolved since, because we talked last night about this since you were there, but they're certainly, the only ones that we hire are the ones licensed by the MOI, and we only hire them for point security. But there's no question, it's a little bit like the Wild West out there in the countryside, and these guys, if you use them to secure your forward operating bases or those sorts of things, is not as much of a risk of them misbehaving. If you use them to do convoy escort, which is absolutely necessary, then you start to get into trouble, because what happens is, well, there's two things that happen. One is the police will agree to escort a convoy, but the police commander wants to be paid something. So you've got a bit of low-level corruption happening at that level, and if he doesn't get paid something, then something untoward will happen to the convoy. And I was witness to 5 tanker trucks burning at about 2 kilometers away from me. They got lit up by the Taliban because there was no escort with them. So you've got, there's always a trade-off. And really the only solution is to make sure that they're licensed and that you follow up on that. We use several companies. One's called Blue Hackle, which is UK based, and one amazingly is called Tundra Security, which is from Canada. And they secure a lot of our facilities, well, although they're not Canadians inside doing the work, it's Afghan men. And as far as the UN being engaged in training of militias, it's not really what I was implying. I was talking about the army, the national army. Somebody has to do it, because frankly, and the police, even if we're not doing it correctly, whether that's the UN, again, I said earlier, I don't care what the delivery mechanism is, somebody has to do it, because that's how you get your quality density to the level it needs to be in order to secure the population. So you don't have to have private security companies escorting fuel convoys, because the population's already on site. And it flows back into this whole idea of unity of command. So, it's got to be tied together very tightly and under one guy. Otherwise, it's a real disaster on the ground. And having lived it, you've got to figure out what mechanisms you need to tie it all together. By the end of the time I left, by the way, every time convoy left, like an Afghan convoy with Afghan private security left, we knew about it, and it was registered in our command posts, and we tracked them as they went through. Just as we would if it was a World Food Program convoy. So we had much better visibility by the time I left, and I'm sure now they have 100% visibility.